Hey there, good people in crypto land. I'm Matt Leising, and this is my podcast, Decent People. Welcome back to the conversation. Today, we've got a special episode where we recorded a Spaces on Twitter with Jack O'Halloran. You might remember Jack. He was a guest on the podcast back in June. He is a co-founder at SKALE, which is like a layer 2 for Ethereum, but it's a little bit more. It's basically a blockchain layer that developers can rent to put their applications on top of, and then on the base layer you've got Ethereum, which is very sound in a security sense. But on the top layer, on the layer 2 on SKALE, you can transactions that are much faster than on Ethereum and much cheaper. Why that's important is for such applications as blockchain gaming, where you've got, I don't know, millions of transactions maybe happening over the course of a game, and you certainly would not want to have to pay for each of those transactions and gas fees. Another big example is NFT minting and trading. So SKALE has become very popular in both of these areas and other areas where L2s are gaining traction. So I wanted to get a kind of an update from Jack on how things are going. They have 5 of the top 25 blockchain games on SKALE now, and their NFT presence is growing quite a bit. So with all that being said, you can also find these spaces that we're doing. If you follow us on Twitter, we are at Decential Media, and we're trying to do them about every week or so. So that's one way that you guys can hear these and participate as well. So thanks as always for your support, and let's get to the conversation.
Hey everybody, this is Matt Leising. I'm the editor-in-chief at Decential Media. Thanks for joining our spaces today with SKALE co-founder Jack O'Halloran. We're going to get into the sort of world of layer 2s in the Ethereum universe and talk about the state of Ethereum and the state of gaming and DeFi and NFTs that are all being helped by layer 2s like SKALE. Jack, thanks so much for being here. How are you?
I'm doing good. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's great to talk to you again. I think we last spoke in June when you came on the podcast.
Yeah, that was awesome. That was a good chat.
Yeah, I enjoyed that as well. So yeah, I thought maybe to start with the news of the day in the L2 world, I guess would maybe be the Blast, what's going on with Blast and some of the criticisms it's received. I think some folks are a little concerned about how they're promising airdrops and things and way ahead of actually launching their product. I wondered if you have any thoughts on that and how you guys thought about that at SKALE, when I know the SKALE token, which I want to talk about, is obviously very important to your network and to the whole ecosystem. But what are there, like Dan at Paradigm said, they're setting a bad example by making these promises. What do you think about that? Is that what's necessary these days to get people?
You know what? It's a really interesting dynamic right now that we're seeing across, I think, every category. If you go look at gaming, you go look at DeFi, and part of this is, I think, a state of where the market is. But this is particularly, as we can see, maybe even becoming an issue in DeFi, where how do we assign value to chains? How do we assign value to layer 2s? Is it the number of users? Is it the number of transactions? Is it the TVL? And so what's happening is you're seeing a lot of investment in terms of investment's maybe the wrong word. I'd say resource allocation in terms of airdrops and liquidity pool rewards and things along those lines to try to essentially drive usage and users to go use products. And then at the end of the day, you have to say, okay, why did they do that? Just so the numbers look better? Anybody who scratches below the surface is going to know you're just paying people to come here and do this thing that they otherwise wouldn't have done. And so the converse to that is, hey, maybe it's a good market tactic to try to get growth and bootstrap in a set of users. So I think it calls out a bigger question of what is the right way to grow and where do you assign value when people are just doing these gimmicky things.
Right. And we talked about this on the podcast back in June about that's a very Web 2 kind of tactic, right? Where you care about growth first and then you care about monetizing that later. But Web 3 turns that on its head, doesn't it? Because you can incentivize people all along the way. Am I getting that right? Do you feel that way?
Yeah, I think ultimately, whether it's Web 2 or Web 3, at some point, whether it's a game, an application, a decentralized exchange, you've got to have people that go use the product and the technology because they want to get the value out of it. And then that system or app or whatever it is has to be able to capture value. And if it doesn't, it's not going to be monetarily viable. And so if you just have a bunch of the same people hopping around to different DeFi chains, participating in things and pretending to use products to just try to capture rewards, and they're going to be there, they're going to be gone the day the rewards go, then I don't see that as an effective resource allocation. If I go back to the original statement of like resource allocation, and that I think is calls out the bigger question, like why are we doing these things? And I think that's why you see the response from Dan and Paradigm is I think they're kind of feeling a little, obviously weren't feeling good about the strategy.
Yeah. And maybe you could tell people, like, I think I was looking into one thing we didn't talk about on the podcast a couple months ago was the SKALE token. And so I was doing some research on that, and it seems to me like you guys are taking that approach very practically. And I wondered if you could just tell people what are the uses for the SKALE token and why you guys thought it needed to exist. And then I'd be curious to hear after that if back in the day you worried about launching a token and in the kind of SEC environment and how you guys became confident that this was something that was going to be maybe seen as a utility token and not something as maybe a security.
Yeah, great question. And we took a very conservative approach on that. And the one of the main uses for the token is staking. The token provides security in the networks. I think there's something like 50 some odd percent staked of the total supply of SKALE. Mm-hmm. And what that does is it acts as security, and it scales a proof of stake blockchain. And the cool thing is it shares security with Ethereum. So all that staking happens in the Ethereum network. But with the SKALE token, which is on the Ethereum network as well, and it connects into the SKALE network. And so that's one use. The other use is to take the SKALE token and pay for chains where the dApp developers will subsidize costs for the users by renting a space in a chain. And the goal is the unit economics end up being a lot better if you're renting space as opposed to paying individually for transactions. So the exciting piece there is that there's going to be a huge governance vote that takes the token chain pricing to the next level. There's a big forum post about it. I think that's going to, I'm hearing as a core team, we try not to orchestrate too many of those things for decentralization purposes, but I'm hearing that it might be even today or tomorrow or the next day where that vote gets pushed live, and then there'll be a week for people to vote on it. One thing we're going to do as soon as it's live, we're going to have a big AMA and have some like materials so that we can really describe what this phase 2 chain pricing looks like. But that will be a huge step for SKALE. But
yeah. And that pricing has to be paid in the SKALE token, correct?
Yep.
Okay. Is there anything else you can tell us about these changes, or are you waiting?
Yeah, so everything is public and open. Everything I could tell you could read about today. One other thing I want to say though, before we get off this topic too much, is when you were asking about what was it like to launch a token, we were really scared because, hey, my co-founder and I had both started successful companies and had been successful in Silicon Valley for a long period of time and had reputations to care about. And really, we're not at all looking for any sort of like quick monetary win. We're looking to make a big change and do something we believed in. And launching a token was a very risky thing. And so one thing we did, we launched a proof of use launch where the token was illiquid for 2 months. And everybody who bought the token in any sort of pre-sale environment or public sale environment had to stake the token for this entire 2-month epoch, or these 2 epochs. And then contractually, all the tokens that could be liquid then became liquid after this 2-month period. So it was you had this chicken and egg thing of like, when does a thing go from being this security to being a utility token? And what we did in SKALE is the token actually had to be utilized technically for a provable period of time by everybody who had bought it. And I think it's a painful way to go. It's really complicated and hard, but I felt like it did a lot of the things that at that time Jay Clayton the SEC was saying were really important. And we did that in partnership with Consensus. And anyways, I can go back to your other question, but I think that is something unique, and I'm glad we did it. It was painful and slow, but it was,
Yeah.
I think, good
So it
investment
sounds like
in
it's you took
time.
it's a lockup approach, but that on top of that lockup kind of approach was you had to prove that you were going to use this, and you're not just coming in here to speculate on a
Yeah,
coin.
so let's say let's say you sold a bunch of hammers to people, but the hammers didn't exist yet. You couldn't use them yet. That, if you go to the Howey test, that's a security. But let's say you sell these hammers and you say, hey, for 2 months, you bought the hammer, but you've got to use it, and everybody's got to hammer these hammers for 2 months. You can't go take the hammer and sell it to somebody else for more. It's, you buy it for this price, and it's not traded. There's no fluctuation. And 2 months, everyone's like, nailing nails in the wall. And after that 2 month period, we're like, okay, now you can sell the hammer if you want. And is it a hammer? Or is it a security? And I think it's pretty clear the thing, like, pounded 300 nails in over the last 2 months. It's a hammer. And so that's the angle. I guess that's the simplistic way to try to describe the strategy of doing a proof of use launch.
So obviously you were talking about Jay Clayton, the previous SEC chairman. Gary Gensler's in there now. Has anything changed from the administrations or anything recent that has made you maybe nervous about your approach or anything like that?
I think I think as a builder, we focus on building. And the more you focus on building, the more you focus on the technology, the more you focus on helping developers, the more you're just trying to get those hammers hammering things. If you're out talking about prices and you're worried and you're doing things on that side, and you're basically welcoming and asking for trouble. And I think everyone's been in a position where they just want to be compliant. I think everybody wants to play by the rules, and we all feel like the more clear the rules are and the more rules that are here that are specific to what we're doing, that are easier to follow, that our legal counsels guide us to do, everyone will do them gladly. At least on the builder side, there's different groups in crypto, but if you go we're part of the Ethereum community, and you get in the Ethereum community, I think there's a definite focus on long-term, on building and developer products, and ultimately servicing the goals of why we do Web3. And I think all those people want to be as compliant as possible.
Yeah. Well, speaking of building, that's a great segue, because I wanted to ask you, I'm looking at the DApp Radar stats, and you guys are second in unique active wallets at just over 1.1 million. Congrats on that.
Thank you.
And what do you think you're doing to attract all these unique wallets and users who are active? Is it gaming, or what are you seeing as where the biggest parts of demand are for Scale right now?
Yeah. So number one, it's high volume, high user applications. So that's gaming, right? Easily. AI applications and social apps, I'd say, are the kind of major categories. And so we took a strategy a while ago. We said, hey, we're not going to win this DeFi battle. That's not our goal. It's not the goal of Scale. And every blockchain has to make certain trade-offs, and some blockchains and layer twos made decisions. Hey, let's make fees higher and add even greater levels of certainty for people doing DeFi. And for us, we said that's a lot of friction to game developers and to app builders and people that want to have lots of users. And so we took a different path. And I think we're just starting to see a lot of the fruits of that labor and effort from across the entire community of all the people that said, yeah, we believe in what Scale's doing. We'll become part of the Scale project. And there's just so many games now building. And so you can go to DApp Radar and see exactly who's doing what and which chains are performing in which way. And sometimes people see that data and like, oh, it's nice when you're successful. You definitely have some haters come out of the woodwork. But the nice thing is you can go look at each one of those applications and go use them. And depending, some of them are geo-gated because the way they utilize tokens, or it's legal in some countries and not proven in others.
Yeah.
But in general, yeah, it's all there, and these games are delivering, and these end user applications are delivering. So it's exciting to see that growth.
And I hate to ask this, it might sound like maybe this is a stupid question, but I'm not sure. But so what you guys are doing at Scale is like you allow developers to come in and basically rent a blockchain. That's what you're doing. You're creating these side, like adjacent chains or shards, some people call them. And so if I'm a game developer, do I have to develop my game with blockchain in mind, or can I just slot it into your underlying technology and that's all I have to worry about?
That's a really good question. So we have both types of developers come to us. Some people say, hey, we've got this really awesome Web 2 game, and gamers don't like when you say Web 2 game. So I'll just say a traditional game. And they say, we think there'd be a really great use of a token or NFTs. And so then we have a team that can help them implement in a Web3 environment. But we have other people that are like Web3 native from day one. But at the end of the day, what they're doing is they're building on Ethereum. They're building for Ethereum. And each scale chain runs Ethereum virtual machine. And it runs a really fast version of it. It runs C++ Ethereum, which is a hyper performant version, and the scale consensus is very fast. And that is why the Dartmouth study, for example, had Scale as the fastest blockchain with the highest throughput when they did a research study. Dartmouth blockchain did this. And so people, to answer your question, game developers, they have a game, but they make it so the blockchain is utilized, and most of them take an approach to say, hey, how can we let a normal user use this? So they have a wallet, custodial wallet, a lot of these big growth applications for each user that's secured by them. And then there's a way that the user is doing things and signing, and it lets the blockchain run in this very fluid, frictionless manner to support gameplay, as opposed to, imagine if each time the user had to go to MetaMask and approve something. And hey, they can use MetaMask too, and you can even set up MetaMask to work really smoothly within the Scale environment as well. So it's not a MetaMask issue. It's really a design issue for the developer.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. And it's funny, you mentioned what gamers don't like to hear, like they don't like to hear it's a Web 2 version or whatever. Is it still the case that I think a lot of gamers were right off the bat not really into the blockchain kind of applications, and they didn't want to? I remember just there being some pushback. Is that still the case? And what are you guys seeing in that?
Yeah, there's definitely a big camp inside of traditional gaming that does not like Web3. And there's different reasons. Some of them think it's not good for the environment. I think now that we're in the proof of stake world, a lot of those concerns have gone away. Some of them think that the games aren't fun. And we talked earlier about these airdrops, just trying to get people to use some DeFi product that they don't really need to use. They're just doing these actions to try to make money. The same patterns can exist in gaming. And the other people think, oh, it's too complicated. Normal users can't use it. But a lot of those concerns in this next wave of gaming are just really just dissipating. They're going away because we have fun games. We have better UX models like I talked about. We have, I think, the right environmental approach with proof of stake blockchains to make these things, to really appease these issues. So I think it's an issue that'll go away. And you see this every time there's a major technical curve. You see a lot of this type of response.
Yeah. Okay, that's good to hear. We talked previously about, I think both you and I were addicted to Clash of Clans for a little while. Yeah. I was wondering what some of your favorite blockchain games are these days, which you like to play yourself.
Yeah, you know what I think is funny? After we talked, I actually opened it up. I started playing again. I got slightly addicted again. I need to quit. I was like, oh, I gotta upgrade these defenses, and
I know. There's always 10 things you want to do, and Supercell is very good at that.
Yeah, they wrote me in really quick. Yeah, so let me tell you, on Scale right now, there's some really fun games, and I'm going to just talk about Scale specifically. One I want to call out is Stray Shot. And so you've got to be a real gamer and have a game, like a PC that you can download the game, which I think there's a lot of people out there that have that, but that is a fun game. I played that, and it's almost like this battle royale, like Fortnite, and you're dropped in, and it's tokenized, there's rewards, it's really fun. That's very cool. 5 Stars has a really fun platform, like fantasy, that's really cool. Untitled Platform has a really Untitled Platformer has this really fun browser game. So anybody can play this. You just go to Untitled Platformer, and you're playing this really fun 2D pixel game, and it's a blast. MotoDex came onto Scale, and they've got a really fun motorcycle game. And their users have surged, and they're number 5 in all of games now. And a big chunk of that is because they're on Scale. And that's because the users, they get to rent part of the chain. The users don't have to pay any fees. But that's just one of these fun motorcycle racing games. And there's this huge set of games that are coming out on Scale that I would love. I think you'll be Some of them have been announced, some haven't. I don't want to say something, I don't want to front run any sort of announcements, but there's just a big wave following. So I think props to the pioneering games on Scale were first and jumped in. I think there's 6 of the top 30 games the last I checked on Dap Radar. I've checked that this week that are on Scale, and I think other people saw that and they wanted to build in the same pattern.
Yeah, that's amazing. And is it still part of the allure here for gamers that, unlike in the traditional world of gaming, you might be able to build a character across several different games or universes and take that character with you and own sort of the weapons you use or the skills that you've acquired? Is that still the pitch that you're hearing a lot of people make as to why this is different?
I'm really glad you asked that, because I think that is frankly is just the biggest misconception about blockchain gaming. And it's one of the biggest pushbacks that the traditional gaming community has against blockchain, because that's actually not a blockchain issue. It's really a game development issue and a game engine issue. And if I have a sword in one game, I want to go use it in another. The blockchain, all it would do is just have a database of a record of ownership that says, yeah, Jack owns a sword, and okay, Jack's in the other game and they use the same database. So I know Jack has a sword, he can use the game here. But the developer still has to make sure they have in their engine that they have the sword. Like when you can see it, they can use it. Like, what does it do? What sort of power does it wield in the game? And so it's more of a game. So what I'd say is blockchain makes that easier because the database on the back end is shared, but all the challenges up front of game usability and game mechanics are still there. And so it just ends up being a big problem. And so you don't see people doing that much yet because game developers have, I think, a hard enough time figuring out what functionality should they let exist on their own chain or on their own game. Okay. Yeah. With their own assets.
And so would you say then it's more, is it incentives or things that you can win in the gaming experience, like an NFT or something like that, or some sorts of monetary rewards that you don't typically have in the traditional gaming world, that is what blockchain brings to the table?
I think I'll give you a quick punch list. So one would be certifiable truth that certain things happened. So I beat you, and that's actually recorded on chain, and then when the winner was going to get some prize, and then that goes to me, and that's recorded on chain, and there's escrows used. And so the blockchains let there be more transparency into the game mechanics, number one. Number two, the game rules that impact money and the amount of money, those things all of a sudden become this economic database that's transparent, right? And some of these games, if you think of these games as being their own countries, and they're like, oh, we have this currency. Let's say you're in Supercell and you bought a bunch of gems playing Clash of Clans, and you bought $1 a gem. And all of a sudden they release 10 billion more gems, and your gems all of a sudden are worthless that you bought. Yeah, and you're right. Damn it. Yeah. So that will prevent things like that from happening, like hyperinflation, where the game developer can just move things around. The other thing is marketplaces. All of a sudden, let's say I wanted to sell something. The game developers right now don't want you to sell anything anywhere else, because that's where they get their revenue cut when you sell in their platform. But if I go to Craigslist and I sell you my Supercell plan and then my login, then all of a sudden you have that and they didn't make any money on that transaction. But with blockchain, I could sell it to you anywhere, and through a smart contract, they could capture this 5% royalty fee anytime anything's sold. And all of a sudden they can sell in a global marketplace everywhere. It could sell on so many different places. And that is that to me is the interesting thing about this, is that it really opens up liquidity in a much bigger way that's still developer and application and game friendly and user friendly. It's a win. The last thing, and I'll stop here, is NFTs. All of a sudden, the ownership of in-game items, I actually can own them and I can trade them more easily. And people like to own things. And hey, yeah, at the end of the day, the developer owns the front end, and you could own an NFT and then all of a sudden they remove that sword from the game. Like it's not 100% trustless, like owning a Bitcoin or an Ethereum or a Scale token, but the contract is, the token is, but its use is still depending on the developer. But even that being said, people still want to own these things, and it's fun to own these things, and it's fun to have these as your NFTs, and maybe even you get a skin for your character and you own it, and it has a liquid market price, and I might be able to sell it to somebody else for more, or maybe less, or buy one for less from somebody. Yep. So those are some fun features that make, I think, blockchain and gaming really good together.
Yeah, I think that last one was what I was trying to get at earlier. I didn't quite phrase it very well. It's that ownership of items in game, I think, that is really cool. So speaking about that, so Scale, the token has gone up and down in price. It's about 4 cents right now. Does that matter to you, or how do you think about that and its price on the market as to what you guys are doing at Scale Labs?
Yeah, I think that's a big question. Number one, we just don't even talk about price. It's just from a compliance perspective and the perspective of just staying focused on building, we just don't talk about it. So for us as builders, we don't worry about it. We are so focused on helping developers be successful. That's what we can do. Okay. And hey, it's every crypto asset that has an actual utility. Value is what helps secure the network. And so it adds to the security of the network. So it's important. But yeah, it's just something we stay away from for, I think, all the reasons you can imagine. And I think it's just good too, because there's a lot for us to focus on around just the utility of the network.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. Yep. You guys came out, you began in one of the last bear markets. I believe you started in 2018 and built a lot for basically 2018 to 2020 when things came out of that bear market, and there was DeFi summer and a lot of things that happened from 2020 to 2022-ish, that huge bull run. And now we're back in a bear market. So you've seen these cycles. Where do you think we are in that cycle? And are you seeing, what indications are you seeing of maybe some kind of light at the end of the tunnel or green shoots?
Yeah, good question. So I think my feeling is that every time there's one of these cycles, and it's been really good I lived through these as a token holder before I was a builder. And yeah, at the end of 2017, we started Scale and lived through a full cycle. And each time the cycle's at its peak, the expectations and the excitement is really outpacing what's happening. Right? And I remember Dentacoin back in 2018 and 2019. Everyone's like, buy Dentacoin. It's every dentist will only accept Dentacoin. And if you don't get your Dentacoin, it's going to be the world's dental currency. Remember, it was worth like $1 billion.
I swear to God, they got my email address, and I used to get an email from them almost every single day. It was insane. Insane.
And it's nothing against the Dentacoin people, but it's a good example of how, was that really happening? No. And is it feasible for that to happen? Probably not. People if they want to use crypto at a dentist, they'll probably use USDC, not like a highly fluctuating currency. But I think, but just calls out that, hey, excitement got ahead of actual utility. But right now we're at a point where, this happened again in 2020, where 2020, we had this amazing like DeFi action. Actually, lots of users and lots of utilization of Ethereum and other blockchains were coming forward and really drove the next level of excitement. And I won't talk about the market and prices. For all the reasons I
think what was cool then was like, it wasn't about a coin anymore. It was more about protocols. It was like, now you've got a lending protocol.
Yeah.
You've got a way to swap out your Bitcoin for cash without giving up ownership of your Bitcoin. It just expanded into all these traditional financial applications, but in a decentralized web or blockchain-based system, which I thought was that was a huge driver, I think, of that bull run.
It was, right. It was like amazing. All of a sudden, all these pieces were there, and I saw them like, whoa, those are the pieces we need at the app level to make sure users can swap and users can have a savings account and users can do all these things they want to do. But the user side was broken still. Go play a game or an app from that era in 2020. It was not at all easy to do. And then fast forward to now and look at the amount of users on Scale every month as an example, and how playing these games. And these are not technical people that are able to get up and running and play these games. And Scale is one piece of that, but there's also so many things that are happening across the board, from developer tooling and other wallets that are really supporting UX. And so that, I think, this wave of utility in gaming, in applications, and just further growth and societal acceptance and awareness is going to really push the next level of, I think, excitement and enthusiasm. Also, the integration of AI into these products and applications is going to add even more fun, interesting use cases, and we'll see a lot happening there too.
Yeah. You said to me before that when you guys were in the really serious building phase, you were going to a lot of hackathons, and around that time, like 2018, 19, and those were the projects that came out a couple of years later that kind of drove that bull run that we're talking about in the DeFi summer and NFTs. Are you still doing that? Are you guys still or involved in hackathons? And are you seeing that same kind of activity again now?
Yeah, you know what? We don't do as many hackathons as we used to. We used to do every single one. And I think it's really great to do that, to get to know developers and build up a reputation your first couple of years. Or if you have a difficult system to build in where you need to try to incentivize developers to learn how to use your product. And Scale is, you're using EVM, using Ethereum virtual machine, and it's really easy to build on Scale if you can build on Ethereum. We get to draft on all that Ethereum hackathon efforts and Ethereum developer growth efforts. And so what we focused on more is getting to upstream into the applications that are going to really start producing lots of traction and users and be the winners of this next, I think, phase of growth. That's where our focus has been. And we will do some hackathons next year again, but just not as many. And it's really, I think, a matter of focus for us at the core team level. But I think the hackathons, I judged ETH Tokyo this last summer, and they're as packed as ever. Like, you go to a hackathon, you don't know that it's a bear market. There's just as many. I'm speaking at Build ETH tomorrow, which it's not a hackathon, but it's a developer conference in San Francisco, and that's going to be just packed with really smart, interesting Ethereum people.
Yeah, for sure. It's a while ago now, but I had that same thought at ETH Denver. It was just like, this is insane. I can't believe it was even more of a bear market then than now, I think.
Yeah.
I usually like to end these on a high note, but I'm going to ask you, I'm going to go the other way this time. What are you worried about? What's a concern for you, or what's an overhang that you think could negatively affect the crypto world and the on-chain building world that we're talking about?
Yeah, I think I'm going to give you like a short-term and a long-term fear. I think the short-term fear is that we don't take this window of opportunity. Right now, a lot of people got burnt because of actually centralization. If you look at all the FTX stuff, and there's a ton of issues that just greed that burnt people the wrong way. And the other piece of that is, like, crypto hasn't delivered. We don't see all these great promises and you haven't delivered. And I talk to people all the time who are, tech people in San Francisco. Oh, crypto, is that still happening? They literally don't know that we're all here to building and there's still stuff happening. And so my fear in the short term is that we miss the window of growth. We don't get that. We don't get 20 million, 50 million daily active users using blockchain applications. That's my fear. And if that doesn't happen during this next wave, then we're going to lose I think a lot of people are like, see, I told you this stuff was a Ponzi scheme and no one even uses these things. And that's what the naysayers say, right? Who don't get how crypto works. So we've got to deliver in the short term. My longer term fear is that we deliver so well on the UX pieces and the making things easy that we create another Web 2, because the users still, there's zero custody happening. There's zero, people aren't really using blockchain like they should be, and they're pretending. And so I always look for successful applications being, one, do they make it really easy, but do they still keep to first principles of blockchain? Because if the app level doesn't keep core principles in mind, then we've just built another Web 2 product. And that's my longer term fear.
Yeah, I was really impressed with the way you guys do your staking, where it's a reverse kind of stake, where you are not, if I have Scale token, I'm not actually sending you my tokens. I'm just sending you a key that attests to the tokens I have, but I custody my own tokens. I thought that was really cool. And
Yeah.
lessons that I think people need to learn
Yep.
in this world, because how many times do you need to give your coins to somebody who then just, either loses them or takes off with them?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Anyway, well, Jack, and thank you so much. You're exactly the type of person we love talking to at Decential. We're all about the people and the human beings behind this technology. We love people, not prices. And again, it's just Scale is one of those projects, and you're one of those people that just get us out of bed in the morning. So thank you very much. And just before we go, is there anything that you want to tell folks that you're excited about with Scale, or things that they should be looking forward to?
Yeah. So number one, Matt, thank you. Always love talking. It's a blast and fun having real discussions about the space, and I enjoy it. And thanks everybody here listening. Really appreciate you being here. And what I'd say is one of the biggest things for Scale over the next week is going to be this governance proposal. So you're going to see a lot of effort and a lot to get this communicated to everybody. And it's really complicated, unfortunately, the price system, because it has to be to do its job. And therein, I think, is going to be the challenge of communicating how it works. But I think there's a simple way to describe it, and hopefully there'll be some good assets and materials there. And on top of that, hey, just get ready. We are gaming, and also social apping and doing some fun stuff. So I think there'll be some just more and more exciting projects joining, and just excited for each week as the community and the ecosystem continues to grow.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, thanks to everybody for listening. And Jack, again, thanks for your time and all of your insights. It's always a pleasure to talk to you as well. And for everybody, we'll be back soon with another Spaces from Decential Media. Make sure to follow us on Twitter if you're not, and on the web, we're at decential.io. So thanks, everybody, and have a great Wednesday.
Thank you.